So the X-Men started out as B-listers in the 1960s before making it big in 1975 with a revamp that would change the team forever. Since then, the group has blossomed into one of Marvel's leading titles, which then branched out to spin-off books such as The New Mutants and X-Force. They've been part of films, TV shows, video games, and are now even teased in part in the MCU. And while our Merry Mutants have done their best throughout the years, they've also been guilty of, well, pretty terrible things that would make their rogues gallery blush. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and this is X-Men, the 10 worst things the mutants have done. Number 10. Magneto removes Wolverine's adamantium. Magneto was the first villain the X-Men ever faced, and while he joined them from time to time, he's also done terrible things for the sake of mutant rights. In the 1993 crossover event Fatal Attractions, the Master of Magnetism renounced his reformed ways and turned on our heroes. In the ensuing chaos, Wolverine tried to attack him, so Magneto retaliates by removing Logan's adamantium skeleton. The extraction kicks his healing factor into overtime and nearly kills him. It's then revealed that Wolverine's trademark claws were bone before being bonded by the metal. In the aftermath, our hero regresses into a feral state, becoming more animal-like and violent. This is due to the adamantium process helping him gain more agency, and so without it, Wolverine becomes more savage than ever. This feral version would sport a wilder appearance and even lose his nose. While Logan would eventually gain his metal skeleton and his rugged good looks back, this remained one of Magneto's most heinous acts. Despite fighting for the good of mutant kind, this was proof of how low he could go to achieve his goals and why he was a quintessential X-Men villain. Number 9. Cyclops and Emma Frost's psychic affair. Now, Scott Summers is known for his by-the-book attitude, but throughout his career as Cyclops, he's done many morally questionable things, such as leaving his wife Jean Grey and their child. But during a troubled time in their marriage, Slim here would cheat on Jean in Grant Morrison's New X-Men. This began when a rift between the two is caused by Scott's recent encounter with Apocalypse, while the Phoenix Force manifests itself through Jean once again. This leads to the couple confiding in other people, with Grey kissing Wolverine, while Summers vented out to Emma Frost in a series of psychic therapy sessions. Eventually, however, Scott and Emma's relationship becomes intimate and they have a psychic affair. The pair are soon caught by Jean, and in the aftermath, Cyclops leaves the team while Emma is believed to have been killed. The whole thing gets even messier when Jean dies, as her ghost convinces a grieving Scott to move on, which he does by kissing Miss Frost beside his wife's grave. Though Cyclops would defend himself by saying that it was only thoughts and no physical contact was made, his infamous affair would remain a dent in his character forever. Number 8. Beast brings the O5 into the present. Dr. Hank McCoy is known as one of the X-Men's smartest members and has been indispensable to the team while even being part of other groups such as the Avengers. But despite his impressive list of credentials, Beast's decision to bring the O5 X-Men would cause ripples throughout the Marvel Universe. After Cyclops killed Professor X whilst under the influence of the Phoenix Force, he became a revolutionary, which caused a rift within the mutant community. Beast then decided to bring the younger version of himself, Cyclops, Marvel Girl, Angel, and Iceman, to the present after seeing how far his former friend had fallen. This caused trouble for years to come, with the time-displaced team coming to terms with the terrible events that will transform them. The young Scott Summers is ostracized for the crimes of his future self, while Jean Grey is horrified by the deaths and hardships that she'll experience with her encounters with the Phoenix. McCoy's actions would even cause his allies to question his decisions, and though the O5 would eventually return to their time, Hank's decision would remain hated by the fanbase. Number 7. 60s Professor X being shady. One of the most iconic things that Kitty Pryde ever said was the line, "Professor Xavier is a jerk." Though this was meant to reflect on her immaturity, Charles Xavier was, in fact, a jerk, especially during his early years in the X-Men. In the 1960s, Professor X was portrayed as a manipulative man who wouldn't mind using his powers to achieve his goals, such as wiping the memories of villains like the Vanisher. He would even pretend to lose his powers and intelligence, all in a ploy to teach his students how to become independent. And when he wasn't busy emotionally scarring teenagers, Charles would leave them alone from time to time and give his leadership instead solely to Scott Summers. But if there's one thing that fans won't ever forgive 60s Xavier for, it would be his crush on an underage Jean Grey. In one of the comic's earlier issues, Charles's thoughts reveal that he is in fact in love with his student, but chooses not to follow through with them because of the fact that he's way older than her. Not exactly a student-teacher relationship the readers want to see, right? Number 6. Kitty Pryde's mental prison. Cassandra Nova is Charles Xavier's twin sister who would serve as a foe for the X-Men in the 2000s. After her initial defeat, she would manipulate Emma Frost to do her bidding and perform a psychic assault on each member of the super team. This ranged from reducing Cyclops into a catatonic state to turning Beast into a wild animal, but the one who got it the worst has to be Kitty Pryde. First, Kitty is placed in a dream world where she lived happily ever after with Colossus. She then gives birth to a child that she names Michael and raises him for the next 3 years. But one day, the X-Men arrive to take their son away from the couple couple, as Professor X believes the infant to be a threat. Colossus even betrays his spouse and knocks her out to surrender Michael to their former allies. This pushes Kitty to find the boy at all costs, not knowing that she has been manipulated by Nova in an attempt to return her to power. Though the events that transpire are mere hours, in Kitty's perspective, she had lived those 3 years, which makes her loss even more painful. Number 5. The death of Charles Xavier. In the 2012 crossover event Avengers vs. X-Men, Earth's mightiest heroes were up against the Phoenix Five. The quintet consisted of Cyclops, Emma Frost, Namor, Magic, and Colossus, who reshaped the world according to their will until they themselves became a threat. As each member of the Five fell, the last ones standing were Scott and Emma, who were becoming more tyrannical by the minute. To stop this deadly pairing, Professor X was recruited by Magneto himself and joined the battle as a last resort. But the cosmic entity had consumed Scott and even led him to betraying Emma Frost to gain more power. After a mental battle between him and Xavier, Scott used his power to kill the Professor and become the Dark Phoenix. He was eventually defeated by Hope Summers and the Scarlet Witch, whilst willfully accepting his arrest after realizing what he'd done. Charles Xavier's death would mark a turning point for the X-Men, with the irony that he was killed by his first student and surrogate son being pretty hefty. And while Professor X, like most of the mutants, would come back to life, his death haunted Scott for several years. Number 4. Ultimate Wolverine and MJ. The Ultimate Universe tried to revamp classic characters by making them darker and edgier, with examples such as a mean-spirited Captain America and the Maximoff twins being, well, far too close for comfort. But the worst thing that they did by far was turn Wolverine into a full-blown creeper. In the 616 universe, Logan has always had a thing for Jean Grey, but despite his feelings towards her, he never did anything serious out of respect for Cyclops. In the Ultimate Marvel Universe, however, he actively seduces Jean to provoke Summers and even tries to kill him out of jealousy. But the most infamous example of Wolverine's creepy behavior is when he sets his sights on another redhead, Mary Jane Watson, which he does so after switching bodies with Peter Parker. Posing as the web-slinger, he makes advances towards the underaged girl without her ever knowing that Peter was actually Wolverine. He even breaks the fourth wall and gives a devilish grin to let the readers know that he knows what he's doing is wrong, but still is going to go on with it anyway. Wolverine's decisions cross being inappropriate and are just straight up gross, with the issue of MJ's age and him taking advantage of her ignorance being a true crime. Had the mainline Logan exhibited this creepy behavior, he would have never have reached the fan favorite status he holds today. Number 3. Deadly Genesis. Now, Professor X, outside of the 60s version, as we'd already covered, has been the paragon of moral virtue as the leader of the X-Men throughout the years. After his shady past, Charles soon grew into the kind-hearted person who served as the center of the group. But in the 2005 limited release series, Deadly Genesis, readers found out another huge skeleton in Xavier's closet. In giant-size X-Men number 1, most of the original team plus Havoc and Polaris were captured by Krakoa, the living island, with only Scott left to warn the Professor. This led to the formation of the second generation of X-Men, but Deadly Genesis reveals that there was in fact another team. Xavier, with the help of Moira McTaggart, recruited Vulcan, Sway, Darwin, and Petra to rescue his students, but their career as X-Men ended in tragedy when they were killed by Krakoa. Professor X then went to Scott, the only one aware of the group, and wiped his memories to spare him from the pain and grief. Unbeknownst to the Professor, Vulcan had actually survived and returned to exact revenge on him and the X-Men, starting with the murder of Banshee. Though the team eventually overpowered their foe, the revelation of Xavier's duplicity forced Scott to banish the Professor for good. Number 2. No More Mutants. House of M had the Scarlet Witch change reality into a world where mutants were the dominant species of the planet and Magneto and his children ruled the Earth. This forced the Marvel heroes to band together in this alternate universe and restore the world they knew. In the climax of their storyline, the Master of Magnetism kills Quicksilver after finding out he was responsible for the events that transpired. A grief-stricken Wanda, who realizes that Magneto has placed mutants above his own children, utters the words, "No more mutants." Her actions restore the Marvel universe back to normal, but with severe consequences. A lot of mutants lost their powers, while their number was reduced to just a few hundred, effectively turning them into an endangered species. Wanda's actions would then cause ripples across the Marvel universe, with villains such as Onslaught and the Shadow King returning because of the new reality. At the same time, the reduction of the mutant community forces Cyclops to take desperate measures, which led to his schism with the X-Men and his transformation into a mutant revolutionary. And number 1, Dark Phoenix destroys a planet. The Dark Phoenix saga is one of the X-Men's most popular storylines, and deservingly so. When Jean Grey is manipulated by the Hellfire Club, the barriers of her powers are destroyed, which corrupts her as she transforms into the Dark Phoenix. When the entity is drained by recent events, the cosmic force devours the energy of a Debari star, which causes the deaths of every inhabitant on a nearby planet. In just a few panels, Jean Grey, through the Dark Phoenix, has basically committed genocide. The forces of the Shi'ar Empire take action and conclude that Grey has become a threat that rivals the likes of Galactus. They sentence her to death due to the risk she poses, but the X-Men challenge the alien empire to a fight on the moon, one that will free Jean should they win. Though the X-Men lose the climactic duel, Jean realizes the threat that she has become and kills herself to prevent the Dark Phoenix from harming anyone else. Ultimately, as the Watcher said, Jean Grey chose to die as a mortal than live as a god. And there we go, my friends. That was the X-Men, the 10 worst things the mutants have done. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. As always, I've been Jules, so you can go follow me over on Twitter at RetroJ, but the O is a 0, or you can swing by Instagram where it's the same handle, RetroJ, but the O is a 0. Hope to see you over there. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. I hope that you're treating yourself with love and respect, my friend, because you deserve all of the good things in life like love, happiness, and success. And don't let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise, alright? You're a massive ledge, and I want you to go out there and utterly smash it today. I believe in you. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.